Hello everyone, welcome to the Energy Source webinar. The Energy Source is a child development center based in Kuala Lumpur, offering early intervention program, assessment and therapy services, day nursery and preschool. This is a pre-recorded webinar. Please sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy the session.
But our vision is, and this has been the vision really since the very beginning, is to improve the lives of people, that's children and adults, people with communication difficulties, by increasing their capacity to communicate effectively about things that matter to them. And I think the most important bit of that is it's things that matter to them. And that's always been our ethos all the way through. So it's not a tool for people, children or adults to say, I want a cup of tea. It's not to express needs and wants particularly. It's to express their views. And that's what often has been missing in other types of communication support. So Talking Mats is now both low-tech and high-tech. It began as a low-tech communication tool. And it's still low-tech. For many people, they prefer using literally a physical doormat with symbols that they can move around. But we have in the last few years developed a digital version, and that is being upgraded as we speak, actually, and there'll be a newer version coming out very soon. So it's both low-tech and high-tech. So to help people communicate, it's a good thing to do. It's a nice thing to do, but more important, it's actually the law. So helping people to communicate and to determine what they feel, as we've got here, it's actually the right of determination. It's enshrined in law. And that's a picture of Eleanor Roosevelt, who was right there at the beginning when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights Act came into being in 1948. So it's not new, this idea that people have the right to express their views. So it is the law worldwide, in fact. The European Convention on Human Rights then took up the mantra, I suppose, in the year after. That was 1949. And in Scotland, we have the Human Rights Scotland Act, which came into being in 2000. And we quite like this quote from Nelson Mandela, that to deny people their human rights, and by human rights, that also includes allowing them to communicate what matters to them. To deny that is to challenge their very humanity. And we've always felt in Talking Mats that for people not to be able to express what they feel about things is dreadful. It's just dreadful. So that's kind of underpinning all of the work that we do at Talking Mats, is this right to self-determination. Okay. One of the other important things about Talking Mats is that there's a lot of research evidence underpinning it. I mean, it was just an idea, but following on developing the idea and doing some bits of work with it, we've done a lot of research, and don't worry, I'm not going to go into all of that just now. But it did begin in 1998, the idea of Talking Mats. And since then, we've done a lot of research. In fact, we're in the middle of doing a piece of work with a research group. I think there's well over 200 research papers. Some of them, ones that we've written as a team, and others that other people have done. So we've particularly looked at the effectiveness of Talking Mats to show how it works and why it works. And as you can see, we've done it with people with a number of different abilities and disabilities. In particular, which is relevant to today, we've done research with young people with additional support needs. And Margo's going to say a lot more about that. And that includes young people with autism. It's been used to help people compare their views over time. We've done a lot of stuff, people with dementia, and also helping people to self-manage their lives. But what's very gratifying to us is that there are other people all over the world now doing research, either looking at Talking Mats or using Talking Mats as a research tool. And in particular, I wanted to mention that talking mats was originally, my idea originally was, it was something for people who had real difficulty communicating. And in fact, the very original group I began with were people with cerebral palsy who had no useful speech. But as the years have gone on and more research is done, people have used it in clinical practice, what we've realized, it's actually really helpful for people who can speak, who can communicate. And it's not, I would not want people to think it's just a tool for non-speakers. And one example is a study that's been done in South Africa looking at sibling attitudes. And that's where they've taken talking mats and they're using it with the brothers and sisters of a child with a communication difficulty to find out what their views are. So in fact, we now actually prefer to refer to talking mats as a thinking tool rather than just as a communication tool. And I think that's worth really holding that idea. And another thing that's important is that we found throughout our research and our clinical work, and I know some parents worry that if their child uses an alternative method of communication, excuse me, some kind of symbol method or a machine or talking mats, it might stop them speaking. And we can absolutely say to you, no, it won't. It doesn't stop anyone speaking. In fact, we've got some evidence it actually helps and can support people's speech. And certainly I've used it a lot with people who maybe have got a communication aid, but use talking mats as well. So it's not something that someone carries around with them and they use to talk all the time. It's something that you will sit down with somebody and use it to help them express what their feelings and their views are about something. Okay. So I'm just going to briefly explain how talking mats works. Should say that this seminar is not a training seminar. This is not training you how to use talking mats. And Margo will say a bit more later that if you really want to use talking mats, you should get in touch with us. We have online training, but Margo will tell you a bit more about that in a minute. Okay. So the crucial thing is thinking about using a talking mat. First of all, we were trying to think of what would be the terminology for the person who's using the talking mat. We don't like using the word patient or subject. So what we say, oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm being told my internet is unstable. So we think of the person whose talking mat it is, the person who's expressing their views, they are the thinker. And that's the term we use. And the person who is doing the mat with them, whether it be a parent or a teacher or a therapist, they are the listener. So that's the words that we use, the thinker and the listener. So the way the mat works is you have a space for the person to put the symbols and to express their views on. So it could be, as I mentioned, we began it with a very simple doormat from IKEA. I'm sure, do you have IKEA in Malaysia? I'm sure you must do. I think IKEA is everywhere anyway. It's a regular cheap doormat. And on the digital version, it can be on a tablet device or on your computer. So basically there's three sets of symbols. First of all, you have a topic, and you can see the topics at the bottom of the mat. There's a symbol representing the topic. In this case, it's finding out what someone thinks about where they live. And then you have a top scale, which is very important. And there's a lot of discussion around the top scale usually. So the top scale is to represent things on, as you can see on the left-hand side, things that are positive. So it could be things that the person is happy with, or that they're managing, or that they really like. That can change. So we'll go with happy just now. So things they're happy with. On the right-hand side, there's things they're not happy with. And then in the middle, it's things that they're not sure about. And that's really important because for many people that we began working with, they only saw things in black and white. And for them to be able to say, well, I'm not very sure, I don't know, is really a really important thing. So you've got topic, you've got top scale, and then you have all the options. And the options relate to the topic. So you can see in this case, this is about where you live. So there's things like what you feel about the garden, your privacy, your bedroom, the food, the noise, the bathroom, and so on. And we have developed a whole range of different topics and resources that we've done research on to find the best sets of symbols to go with individual topics. So we've done a lot of that work for people already, and those are all on our website. So what basically happens is that the listener, the person starts with a blank mat, except they have the topic and they have the top scale. And then the listener will hand the symbols on the physical version, hand the symbols one at a time to the thinker, who will think about, well, what do I feel about this? What do I feel about, for example, my bedroom? And then they can take the symbol and move it and place it on the mat. And it works in a similar way with the online one, sorry, with the digital version. And so they gradually will build up a picture, literally, of what their views are about that topic. And you can see that for this person, there's quite a few things that they like. There's a couple of things like the food and the noise they're not very sure about. And there's quite a few things, there's 4 things that they're not happy with. And then what can happen is that you will always take a photograph, have a record of their views. And then there really should be an action that you'll maybe do something about it. It might be that you just say, I'm going to come back next week and we'll do another one, we'll go into more depth. Or it might be for this person, you might say, right, you're not happy about the bathroom and the toilet, so let's look at what's wrong. And you might then do what we call a submat to investigate that further. So that's kind of in a small nutshell how Talking Mats works. There's a bit more to it, and that's why the training is really important, because we have found that people sometimes they get a kind of an idea of how it works and they're off with that, and then they use it wrongly, and it can be detrimental if they don't use it correctly. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Margo. Now, just to say a little bit more about Margo, because she won't say it herself. Margo is also a speech and language therapist. And Margo is now one of the directors of Talking Mats. As Malini said, I retired at the very end of 2019. So Margo has taken over from me as one of the directors. We have another director, Lois. So Margo is our expert on children and young people, and particularly our expert on autism, which I certainly am not. So I'm delighted to hand over for the rest of this presentation over to Margo. Okay.
Joan, thank you very much. And there is no way that I could even attempt to fill Joan's shoes. And she continues to be a real inspiration to us in the team. So just to kind of carry on thinking through how can we use Talking Mats to support children with developmental conditions, autism, but also some of those other conditions that might go alongside autism, learning disability, Down syndrome, dyspraxia, all of these kind of conditions, these neurodevelopmental conditions, can sometimes it's good to have a framework and a way of supporting communication. So I'm sure that those of us that are here already know, a lot of us will already know this, that autism is a complex condition and it does affect everybody differently. And anxiety and stress is a really big factor in treating autism. Anxiety disorders affect 42% of autistic children. And that stress and anxiety can have a huge impact on the person's life and the family life as well. Around 1 in 4 autistic people speak few or no words, but they can find other ways to communicate. And I think one of the important factors when we're thinking about Talking Mats, using Talking Mats with people with autism, is that some people with autism take longer to process information. And that's a really important thing to bear in mind as we think about why does Talking Mats work in this kind of population. Because Talking Mats is visual, that is has a huge impact, and visual communication is really vital to all of us. I'm sure as we use our mobile phones every day and we look at our apps and we select our apps, we look at road signs as we're driving along, we quickly process that visual information. And that is obviously for people with autism, they have often very real strengths in visual communication. Talking mats also allows communication without speech. Our philosophy when using a talking mat is that the person speaks if they want to, and often they do speak, but they don't have to. You are actually expressing a view by placing an option on the mat. That is your way of expressing the view. The extra processing time is really vital. Words and speech disappear, whereas visuals do not. And that extra time that the person has to look and to process the information and allows this, as Joan was saying, this thinking and reflection, which has become a very powerful part of the talking mats process. Also, when you do a talking mat with somebody, it takes the pressure off that face-to-face interaction because the focus goes onto the mat. You could see in the pictures that topics are broken down into different concrete parts. And again, that helps to support somebody's thinking and being able to support somebody to give their views. A very crucial thing actually for working with people with autism, it also helps them to understand that some people can have different views from you. So my background, when I was working as a speech and language therapist, I worked in a mainstream school in a specialist autism facility. And this was actually a very important learning point for some of our teenagers to understand that actually we can have different views from one another, and that is okay. Apologies, the sun has come right up. I might have to go and shut the curtains in a minute. So people also can use talking mats to self-manage and to support their decision making. And sometimes this sort of self-regulation is actually quite an important aspect of doing a mat. We used talking mats sometimes just as a little bit of a way of sort of calming somebody down, just to think through, you know, what's happened, what went wrong, and just have a little bit of a time to kind of sit and have a little bit of a calming activity. And that was sometimes effective. So when we start to use talking mats with people with autism, I think it's important to say that we come to it with certain assumptions, and that not everybody will be at this kind of stage in their development. And obviously there's a whole series of things that can be done to prepare people for before they're ready to start using a talking mat. So we make the assumptions that the thinker does have preferences, and that actually the thinker knows how to, or they care about sharing their preferences. They also understand that there is a positive and a negative, but that does not equate to right or wrong. And that obviously is a very important distinction. The person has to be able to understand that a visual image represents a concept. And that is called symbolic understanding. So how would we go about starting somebody with a talking mat? Well, one of the best ways to start is by modelling and actually just showing. And this is much easier if you're working in a situation where there are other children, there are other demonstrate it with. So perhaps a teacher could demonstrate it with their learning assistant, or a therapist can demonstrate it with one of the other people in their group. But it's just, modelling is a great way to kind of get the children to start off seeing what's being done and kind of raise their interest in a little bit. Also, we start with the known preferences. So find out the things that we know they like and the things that they don't like, and start off with that, knowing that actually once you know that they can use the scale, you can try this out in different ways. But we tend to say that start off with items that will not be needed functionally. So things like, you know, listening to a little bit of music. Was that something that you like or you don't like? And just being able to listen to the clip and express their view. It could be about a smell, you know, smell this, is it something that you like or not like? So you kind of start to build it up gradually. We put nail varnish there simply because there was a young lady who had she had very strong views about the kind of nail varnish that she liked and she didn't like. So when you start off with talking mats, sometimes you have to do it as a sorting task, and that is almost like a teaching mat, and that's okay. You need to build up the skills before somebody is really confident at using it to express their views. And then you can teach the top scale in the context. So I'll just explain that a little bit. So this was a situation where we were using some, this was a young man with autism, and he was just telling me the things that we had some different fruits that he was eating, and he recognized, he's now at the stage of symbolic understanding, so he can recognize that the picture means something. So he knows what an orange is when he sees the picture of it. So he was able to tell me the things that he thought were good, were oranges, apples, bananas, and pears. Not good, lemon. But as well as that, we kind of do quite a lot of sorting tasks with him. So I had been working with them. They had in their little group, they'd been making some soup. So they had been thinking about the things that goes in the soup and the things that does not go in the soup. So after he made the soup, he then had to make a judgment about the things that he put in the soup and the things that he did not put in the soup. So it's kind of starting to build up these skills. Also, I think it's important to think about the sort of the level of symbolic understanding, and that will give you an idea about somebody's cognitive ability. So can they recognize a picture of an orange as being an orange? So it would start off with the object itself. They would have to recognize the object. You can then move on to photographs. You can then move on to pictures, and then you can move on to symbols, and then to words. So there is a developmental progression there about somebody's ability to recognize things symbolically. Another thing that we have to take into account when we're doing mats with people with autism is just the environment, the time of day, the place. You wouldn't start to try and do a mat with somebody 5 minutes before they were due to have their lunch. You try and think about the contextual and the environmental setting. One of the big strong factors of autism is this needing to pattern, and sometimes you do find that children and young people, they want to make patterns on the mat, and there's various things that we recommend to try and avoid that. Other things that could be distracting are the detail, and we tend to move quickly away from photographs onto images as fast as we can, because photographs can be incredibly distracting because of the amount of detail that is in the photograph. So this is kind of how a little example about how we might start to build it up. So you can see there that there's the real apple there attached to the picture of the apple, and then the person would taste the apple and decide, was it something that was good or not good? And initially it isn't on the mat, and then we can build it up to using trays and using photographs before we actually then would be moving on to using the actual images. So there is a progression of thinking also through the visuals as well as the language. So as Joan said earlier, that is part of the reason why we do recommend training, because although it does look very simple And in many ways, that's its strength, but it's not simplistic in that it does take quite a lot of preparation to think about how you would structure your conversation, how you would introduce it, and so on. So you're probably a little fed up of me talking, and I think I'm just going to put on a film to show you. This is a film of a little boy with Down syndrome, and my colleague has been doing a home visit, and she's asking him how he feels about things in his world, his wider world. So I'm just going to show you this little clip now.
This is about your world. That's Archie, and it's your world. And there'll be things you're happy about, things you're not happy about. Okay. And in the middle, things you're not sure about. Okay, well, we start with, what about the swimming pool? What do you think about the swimming pool? You're happy about the swimming pool? Okay.
Jump in.
You jump in?
Yeah.
And make a big splash?
Yeah, Mum.
You splash Mum in the swimming pool? Okay. What about school? How do you feel about school? Okay. You're not happy with school?
No.
Okay. What about your teacher? Not sure about Not sure about your teacher?
Archie.
Does she shout Archie?
Yeah.
Okay. What about the park? You're not sure about the park? No. What about going to the cinema?
Me by the.
You like going to the cinema?
Yeah, me by.
Okay.
Me the.
What about going to the shops? You're not sure about the shops. You're happy going to the shops?
Yeah.
Okay. There's nothing on that.
Nothing.
Have I forgotten something?
Yeah.
Anything we can add?
Tin can.
The dragons?
Yeah.
The dragons. Will I draw a dragon on this?
Yeah, see.
I'll get a pencil. Oh, I can't draw a dragon. There's its wings and its head. And we'll write dragon.
See.
Oh, train the dragon. Train the dragon. Okay, so what do you think about train the dragon?
Mm.
You happy about it?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's have a look at this. You can change them if you change your mind. You've told me you're not happy about school?
No.
No. You're not sure about your teacher?
No.
Because she says Archie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's on me.
You're not sure about the park?
No.
Okay. Things you're happy about are the swimming pool. Oh, you've changed your mind about the park. You're happy about the swimming pool?
Yeah.
The cinema?
Yeah. Me by and I'm home.
Okay. Going to the shops?
Yes.
The park?
Yeah.
And train the dragon.
It's insane.
Are there any you want to move about?
No.
You happy with that?
Yeah.
Oops. Okay. So you can see there that was little Archie, and one of oh sorry, let me just shut this. Oops, now I'll be in complete darkness. You can see there that Archie was very clear about his views, and that Rona just took the time to give him a little bit of time to look at what he said and then add anything that she might have missed. And using blanks, what we call blanks, is a very important part of the process, because we're respecting the person's views, and actually we might not know what it is that's the thing that's an issue that we always ask, is there anything that you want to add? And then she also gave this thing that she did this bit where she used what we call check and change. So we're just reviewing it. So what you've told me is, and giving Archie a little bit of time to think through what he said. And I just put up this slide here because one of our big drivers in Talking Maths is that actually, as Joan said earlier, it is the law. And in Scotland, we are in 2020, the Scottish Parliament has just ratified the whole of UNCRC. So we are really looking at how that influences our practice. And I just finished a large bit of work for the Scottish Government, looking at how we are incorporating children and young people's views into their programmes. And we use this model that was devised by Professor Laura Lundy from the International Children's Rights School in Belfast. And she was saying, according to UNCRC, it's our responsibility to create a safe space for children and young people to give their views. And that means that we have to actively create that space. It isn't good enough to say, well, I've got an open door policy, they can come and speak to me anytime. Actually, we've got to create an opportunity for children to be able to express their views. And then we can capture their voice. And Talking Maths is a way of actually gaining the views of children and young people. And then crucially, we don't stop there. It's, well, what do we do with that information? Who's actually listening? Who's the audience? Who can actually make some changes here based on what the child has told us? And that is also about the influence. What influence does that child's view have? And in Talking Maths, we very much believe that it's important for the children and young people to recognise that their voice does have an influence, and that actually things change. So in the situation there with Archie, you can see that he didn't have a good day at school that day, and he wasn't too happy about school. And it's possible that Rona might think, okay, let's look into this in a little bit more detail and see if there's some things that are particularly difficult for him at school. He already told us that he doesn't like the shouting of the teacher. So it's trying to act on that and actually feed some of that back to what's happening at school and see if we can do anything to actually improve his overall experience of school. So we're just thinking about how can that voice have some degree of influence?
I'm going to tell you a story about a young man with autism who was part of a secondary school. He stopped coming to...
I forgot there was some speech attached to that slide. Sometimes with a little bit like a detective. So I was just going to give you a very quick example where we take some questions. And he basically just stopped coming to school on a Tuesday. And he had quite significant autism. He did speak a little bit, but not much. And he certainly wouldn't be able to say why he wasn't coming to school. That would be far too difficult for him to be able to express that.
I'm going to tell you a story. We looked at the subjects that he did.
What we did was on a Tuesday. So we created a Talking Maths using the subjects that he coming to school. And then he was able to tell us he put hope. We then did a further mat to look at home economics.
And here it is.
And here it is. He was able to tell us that he did not like the things that they were making. And in fact, it turned out that the home economics teacher had looked up her planner and told us that the week before he went off, they had made chicken, sweet and sour chicken. And it was the touching of the food and cutting up the chicken that he really did not like. And once we were able to reassure him that there was no more chicken on the menu, he came back to school. So that was the way that we kind of used talking mats to be a little bit like a detective to find out what the issue was. Okay, I think I will stop there. I hope that's given you a little bit of an overview very quickly, just kind of give you a bit of an overview. Have a look on our website. Our website is just at the moment being redeveloped, and our new website will be launching just early in March. But there's a lot of our research papers on our website. There's also lots of blogs that have been written by practitioners from all over the world about their practice in using talking mats. So if you type in your area of interest, you probably will see some blogs coming up that might be of interest to you. As Joan said, we've got a big research community worldwide, and there's a section on our website with a lot of the papers and the reports on them that you can learn, that you can read. We also do online training, which is to do the foundation training, which is about 10 to 12 hours of learning. I think it would be lovely for us to think we could travel over to Malaysia to see you all, but I don't think that's going to happen in the near future. But it's wonderful that we can be with you here today, just doing this online. And I think if one of the benefits, if we can say, or the good things that have come out of this pandemic, if we can say it in that way, is that actually it has opened up, I think, more opportunities for digital and remote communication. So that's good.
Thank you for joining us. If you would like to know more about our services or would like to book an appointment with one of our specialists, please email us or give us a call at the following information.